continue our coverage of calls for police reform in America. Those calls all across the country echo protests that took place in Chicago after the death of Laquan McDonald more than 5 years ago. In 2014, the black 17-year-old was shot 16 times by a white police officer. Later, a federally enforceable court order mandated police reforms in Chicago. Adriana Diaz looks at whether there's been progress. Adriana, good morning. What'd you learn?
Good morning, Tony. As you said, Laquan McDonald was killed in 2014, but it wasn't until last year that the court order mandating reforms known as the consent decree took effect. Now, training is up, but critics say that racial bias has not changed and that Chicago police is dragging its feet. Protests raged so fiercely in Chicago after George Floyd's death, the city raised its bridges to cut off crowds. Baked into their anger was deja vu. The same demands followed Laquan McDonald's death in 2014.
We've been here time and time and time again.
Arewa Karen Winter's grandnephew, Pierre Laurie, was killed by Chicago police in 2016. She and civil rights attorney Craig Futterman sued the city and are now working with police on reforms. Have they been successful?
It's early.
The 236-page consent decree mandated changes in police use of force, training, and officer wellness. But so far, CPD has missed 70% of the deadlines and continues to struggle to conduct meaningful community engagement, according to an independent auditor.
We're seeing the same stuff in the street. Black people still being killed, still being abused, still a culture of denial and impunity.
Can bias be eliminated within the system through reforms, or is it time to scrap what's in place and think differently?
Everyone has a bias of some sort, but it's about what you do with that information and dealing with that. And I think the training teaches us how to deal with the bias.
Deputy Superintendent Barbara West says reforms, like increased training, are working.
Listen, I don't want him arrested. I just need him out of here. Time is money.
They rolled out this virtual reality training for recruits.
I don't have nowhere else to go. This is my home.
I understand that, sir.
Which an instructor demonstrated.
Sir, I need to see your hands, sir. Sir, I need to see your hands. When you actually put yourself in a situation, all the training starts to kick in a little bit more.
Annual use of force training is now mandatory. Before, West says officers could go decades without a refresher. And use of force is down 34% since Laquan McDonald's death. But a closer look at the numbers shows Black and Hispanic people are just as likely to be on the receiving end. Despite a violent Father's Day weekend, overall crime is at a 5-year low. But Blacks and Hispanics account for 91% of arrests, a percentage that hasn't budged in 4 years. Why has the racial makeup of the people being arrested not gone down if you've been reforming?
So if you think about where our calls for service come from, they do come from neighborhoods that are maybe predominantly African American and Latino.
What we've actually seen up until very, very recently is how can we do the least amount possible to check a box to get out from under this.
How has this experience been for you on a personal level, seeing the changes people are crying out for, being a woman in uniform, but also being a Black woman?
Sure, first, when I take this off, I'm a Black woman and I have Black children. But in terms of what we're trying to do as a police department, I know it's the right thing.
But Winter says change is taking too long.
This train that's coming, get on and get out of its way.
Winters and Futterman are both part of a new task force with police reviewing use of force. Now, while cities like Los Angeles have seen positive change after their own consent decrees, don't expect one in Minneapolis. Under the Trump administration, the Department of Justice has been critical of them. Anthony?
Adriana Diaz reporting for us. Thanks, Adriana.